Hey, Leah. How are you? Nice to see you, Leah. Okay. All right, so we're going to get rolling here because, like I said, we've got lots that I want to cover. So I'm going to begin with our acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we are situated on Treaty 6, at least that's where I'm coming to you from at this point. Traditional lands of the First Nations, including the Cree, Blackfoot, Métis, Nakota Sioux, Saulteaux, Inuit, and others whose history, languages, and cultures continue to influence our vibrant community. So I want to spend a little bit of time, as we were sort of saying, we're going to look at 2 months at a time. So we're going to kind of look at what's happening with the December and January. But I also want to touch a little bit on February because it just kind of slides through and slides into it as well. And I'm going to bring in that representation of number, because that was one question that's been asked over and over, is how do you represent 100? Like, what could that look like? So as we unpack some of the pieces today, hopefully that will give you some strategies that we can go with that as well. So focusing on sort of the KN, or it's not the KN1, the N1, sorry, that should be a 111. So looking at that first outcome, because that's a critical piece, and making sure that we hit sort of our, looking at our targets. And remember that what was in yellow at our year at a glance is only a suggestion. If you're exceeding that already, great. If you're not, that's okay too, because you're going to have to tailor this to wherever the needs are for your students as they came in. But as we're moving from November right into the end of January, you can see that sort of the grade 1 teachers were suggesting that where we're going to be working is moving from that 50-ish goal sort of at the end of December or before we head into Christmas, and you may not be at 50. As we start moving into our target to 100. So not to misunderstand that January is not a goal to finish at 100. It's the slide and the start to moving our way to June 30th, which is our 100 goal. So you're just on that path and that journey might be very different for each of the individual students as you're moving through. It might be very consistent, depends on your group of students. So far, we're not hearing that there's lots of continuity there. We're seeing some students who are still working at 10. And we're finding that there are some students that are very able to move forward and have gone already into 30, 40, 50, and are starting to move forward. Again, there's no, that's not critical that we necessarily get to all of those numbers at the same time. But what will be important at this point now is with those key verbs that we have and all of the targets that we're trying to move forward to bridge to get to that 100 level that is maybe a little bit different than we had in the past. We're also looking, how are we addressing some of those skills that they have to have? We're well entrenched in routine. So we could take some new opportunities now to infuse a new activity that still meets the same goal as a worksheet or a workbook might, where we can infuse a new engaging way of still meeting that outcome and perhaps addressing some of our skill level. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the skills in just a moment. So what we're looking really at is how are they unpacking quantity? How are they able to represent it to us? How are they able to describe sharing of quantities? Those are the pieces that we're, at this point, we want them to be starting to really become proficient in, as are the words that surround the activities they have to do. Those should be starting as well. And I'm going to talk about that even more so because we're finding lots of content is happening in the classrooms right now, lots and lots of content, lots of assessment of content, but not so much the pairing of the content with the skill concept that is built in. So I just want to touch on that just a little bit as well. So just a reminder, when you look at the year at a glance and we have our outcomes, the bullets that are in there are your understandings, right? They are not the knowledge pieces. So they are the statements that are in the center of your rows. We still have to come back to this document in order to really get a good understanding again of what is the knowledge and what is the skill and procedures that are paired with each of those understandings. So when we look at the 1.1, which is looking at basically the symbols, the grouping of symbols used to represent numbers, that would be, can I identify 3? Can I identify 15? Can I identify those numbers, right? So can I symbolically write that down? Can I even identify the word that goes along with it? And one of the questions that was asked is, do they have to know all the words to 100? And the answer is no, I don't believe so. I think it's reasonable at some point in time that we would be able to identify 30, 40, and 50, but we're not doing individual numbers. That was never the intent, and I don't think we ever have that anywhere here either. Making sure that 0 is included in that conversation, because when we put number lines onto their desks, that's a really critical piece that sometimes students forget about, that when they start counting, they go right to 1 because we say 1, 2, 3, 4. So they forget that when I'm doing a measurement, that I'm actually starting at 0 and working my way through. So we'll look at that one as well. When we talk about counting can begin at any number, that's my goal. As I'm working with 100, I should be able to, at some point, depending on where I'm at, be able to go forward, go backward from a number. So if I say 47, because I'm able to really do well at 50, can you tell me how to get to 50 from there? Can I go backwards too? And so on. So there's some oral components. Can they show that to me? How would they show that to me? Where could they find something to show it to me? So one of the other things I'm going to say to you just right up front is when we have all of these verbs that we're going to look at in just a minute here, I'm supposed to assess the verbs at the same time. And if I'm going to do that, I have to make sure that the students have enough tools in their toolbox so that they can demonstrate what it is I'm asking them to show me, right? That's really, really critical. If I only show you and model 2 ways and I didn't get one of them, I don't have a lot of choices anymore to show you. So the more we can kind of put in there, and this is a good time to do it now that I'm in a routine already, and I kind of know what your expectations are and when we do certain things, now is a good time for us to slide in a few of the new sort of activities that still meet the same outcome. And the analogy that I'll show you or I talk to you about is the one that I would normally use. If I was teaching a science unit, for example, I might come in on the first day and show them a 5-minute short video. And it would have some of the key outcomes in it that I want them to learn. So we talk about it. But then on day 2, I'm going to show them another short video maybe, but it's not the same one. I'm going to review what they've learned, but I'm going to give it to them from another presenter. So new eyes, new voice, new background, maybe same terminology, maybe something new, but just so that they start to refine and start to make connections. And day 3, I might do the same thing. So the more they see it from a different perspective, the stronger those connections start to become. And that's a piece that we need to do. Having math talks would be a good one. Having a story that links to your outcome would be a good one, right? Those are all possibilities that we can use. So when I'm looking at your skills and procedures in grade 1, I see words like represent, identify, count, which is a big part of it. Skip count is also a big part of it. There's where the money is going to be a huge component for us. Partition, demonstrate, recognize. These are all skills that the students need to be able to know about. No, they're not just for us, the teacher, to know about. They're for the students to know about as well. So when I'm unpacking one of these skills, I need to make sure that the student understands what it is. So when you're teaching me that skill or that verb, I need you to teach it to me not in the middle of my math lesson, so that I'm trying in one side of my head to internalize the math piece. And on the other side of my head, I'm trying to figure out, what does that word mean again? Like, what does they want from that? So could we teach that on a separate location in a separate situation outside of math? If I wanted to, for example, recognize, or I want to identify, maybe I have them take their lunch and they put it out on their table just before they have lunch. And they say, let's identify all the things in your lunch that are healthy and not healthy foods, right? So now I have a conversation that's outside of math. I'm going to demonstrate to them what identify means, but I'm going to do it in a context that I can do. I can figure this out. I got a lunch, it's right in front of me. And I can talk about lunch because lunch is something that I don't need to memorize. I don't need a new algorithm for. It's just my lunch. Now I can have a conversation about, do I have a healthy lunch or not? But once I know what identify means, and you've given me the tools to understand what would I look for when you identify something, then I could bring out a pattern, or I could bring out a geometric shape, or I can bring out numbers, and I could say, identify blank, whatever it is that you're wanting me to do. So identify some common attributes, or put a whole bunch of things on the table. What are some similarities and differences? That gets to that deeper one of compare. So these words we need to teach our students. And I would suggest that up front, we make a decision about what are some of the big rocks that are sitting, let's say in December, January, February, that are a skill. What are the ones that are really the important ones that are hanging in those outcomes that you're covering, and what you're doing with the students at that time? Because you're not going to be able to teach me represent, identify, count, recognize, again, demonstrate, partition, and we get more, investigate, identify, represent. But I do see some things showing up over and over. Represent is a big one. So we're going to talk a little bit about what those skills might be that we might want to have a conversation about. We're talking also about visualizing quantities between 10 and 20. What would it look like to visualize? How could they model a number between 10 and 20 for us? What would that look like? And what do I have in my classroom that I can give them as a tool? So again, if I don't get the number, but I just want to learn how to model, then I need to have some tools, again, that I can do that with. Relate addition and subtraction to various contexts involving composition and decomposition. And again, we're going to look at that even from money and from a base 10 block perspective. Okay, so let's start off first with the numbers, or the words that you see in red are those skills that I was talking about when we looked at the curriculum document just for sort of December, January, and February was the same. So when I look at those skills, that's what you have in red. Now that's a lot of skills just for 2 months or 3 months. I need to make sure that I pick out some of the big rocks. So on your behalf, I went and looked at what it was we were trying to accomplish, and what are the ones that we are seeing repetitively come over that I really do need to master as a child in that particular section. So represent is one, count, identify, and then I put relate, visualize, and model all together because they do fit together and they're likely going to happen at around the same kinds of times that you're going to do it. We need to model, we need to show a student what a model is. So when you have your slide deck, you'll see that there's a skill link in here. You have the same ones that have been put down, but all I did was I just sort of summarized them into a shorter version. And at the bottom of your screen is another tab called skills. So we're looking at and talking to lots of people and saying, so where are you at and what have you done for assessment? And it's been lots of content. But one of the things we heard was, I'm not sure what I should say to represent. I'm not sure what it would mean to count. Like, how do I define that? What does it mean to relate to something? And so what we're trying to do right now is put together a bit of a document for you that has as not a definition per se that you would read out to the students, but more for yourself and how would you unpack this? It would be a great PLC conversation to have if you have a great partner in the school, and if you don't, as a division. As a division, how do we unpack the word represent? Like, are we all kind of on the same page, or are we going off in different tangents with that? So having that conversation about recognize, represent, all those words, remember counting principles are key. We are working towards the mastery of those counting principles and making sure that they are well entrenched and that they can visually see them. Subotize. We said Subotize should start right in September, and we should still be doing games with those at any time that you possibly can. I'll revisit that a little bit before the end of the session. Describe and solve. So I've included some here that not necessarily going to be big rocks for us right now, but just going to start building on that for you so that you have some terminology that maybe you can talk about at your school and say, like, where are we on this page? So if a student came from your room and walked into somebody else's room, would they hear something completely different? Would it be the same? Like, where would they fit? Okay, let's go back. So count is still a big thing. Counting, learning to count, different root groupings, addition, subtraction, showing the quantity in different ways. So now, like I said, is a time for us to maybe look at, are there other ways that we can start to infuse some things? I was recently at a session with Dr. Newton, Nikki Newton, and some of you may know her from her work that she's done. But her hat that she hangs up is on counting. That is where she is really an expert in. And she did a lot of work, but it was really timely that she had it. So I'm going to share some of this because it fits well into what we're going to talk about. So again, if I'm looking at some new ideas, what could that look like? Could it be guided play? Guided play means that I have an outcome in mind. I'm going to give you what you think is a game, but this game targets the outcome. So could we find some guided play opportunities where students would be focused on where we want them to move and move forward? So if I'm at 50 and your goal for me to start moving to 60 or 70, then what do I have in my back pocket that I can use for that? In her work that she's done, she's identified that there are 20 different levels for a student developmentally to go through in the process of counting. Some of those happen well before they even start at school. So in her work, she identifies the top 5. I'm going to say personally, I think maybe the top 4. We would see students at kindergarten show up at our doors. Sometimes they learned how to count to 20. Sometimes they learned how to count to 10. They can rotely say it. They've learned a little song along the way from their parents about how to do it, just like the alphabet. So they know some of those works already. And so sometimes parents say, oh, you know what? They can even count to 100 already. Like, I don't even know if they need kindergarten. And I used to hear that sometimes as a principal, but I would say it's fantastic that they can do that. But I'm not sure that they know what those numbers mean that they're saying. And that's a huge component of that. You know that already as grade 1 teachers. I can say 2, but if I don't have a clue what 2 is, then it's just something I've learned. Memorizing is part of it. Rote counting is part of it. So they kind of start when they come in at kindergarten to be sort of a corresponder. Can we find what 1 looks like? Can we touch 2? Can we count to 3? And then so on. We work our way up. One of the conversations that she had was surrounding manipulatives. So if we use manipulative in the classroom, one of the strongest things that we can do with a manipulative, and one of your outcomes is to use quantities and pictures in objects, in words, in number, in physical, like a manipulative. But one of the research pieces that she talked about was, if we're going to do that, could you bring in the physical object instead of just starting with a picture? Case in point, she was saying, here's an apple. I want to use apple as my real world context as a manipulative. But instead of just showing me a picture, could you just start with 3 apples in your hand and say, this is what we're going to talk about today, so that there's a real world connection to the fact that this is a real thing, a manipulative, I could actually hold it. Not saying that you pass it around, but just that idea. Then can you find me something that looks just like that? Can you model something for me? Now, it could be that you're also looking for them to have the attribute of the same color. They don't have to. Maybe you're just looking for the quantity. So they could pick 3 anything. Could be 3 bears, could be 3 squares, whatever. And then can they symbolically show it? But if it's going to be real, and I don't want to be hauling around a whole bunch of things, one of the things I can do is I could bring money into the picture very quickly as well. Money on the table is real. Money in the real world is real. I may not have a piggy bank. I may not have a lot of money as a grade 1 student, but in my world, as I grow up, money is part of my world. So if I have to learn the money anyway, in order for me to be proficient in the financial literacy component conversations I'm going to be doing later, then why don't I leverage both together? I can put the money on the table. I can touch it. Now I can see if they know their coins. Can you bring me out 4 toonies? And in grade 1, what else do we have to do with that? We also have to know how to skip count. Toonies are a perfect opportunity for us to skip count. So when you bring money out, leverage it every time it comes out as something that you can use every time. I don't have to wait until I'm going to do a lesson on skip counting. Let's start it right when it's there and use it each time that we do something. So in this case, I could say, how many toonies do I have? Great, I have 4. What are they worth? They're 2 each. So let's count by 2s. And maybe that's their first time doing it. They do it together. So they can have a number line on their table and they can skip count along the way. So I'm going to leverage this to go 2, 4, 6, 8. Can you show me 4 of something else in the classroom? Can you draw me 4 of something else? Can you represent 4 something that's on your desk? Maybe it's 4 different coins. And then what is the number? And then so on. Can you show me 3 nickels or whatever number you want them to work on? Just simple. It could be even 15, right? Can you show me 15 of something? Keeping it real, I just took a snapshot of candy bars and put that in there. So that's real. I can I could tangibly touch it. What else do I have that has a group of 5 or 15 or whatever number you want to put? So the point being that when I'm working with the manipulative, there should be something that links to the real world. Base 10 blocks are fantastic tools, but they're very abstract. They are up there when it comes to higher level thinking because you don't walk around with base 10 blocks in your pocket. They work like money, but we don't have them in our pocket. So when you tell me that a unit is 10 of those make a thing called a rod, I'll learn that and I'll memorize it. But if I don't have a connection to where that might fit, then it's just a rote memorization of a tool. I need to really understand where that fits. If I did money first, and I said that 10 pennies could be a dime, and 10 dimes could be a loonie or a dollar, I now have a connection to my base 10 block. So I'm going to throw this into the chat box for those of you who may or may not use them a lot. I just want to do a little bit of work. You can bring it up on your computer. So the link will be in there. I'm going to jump between the actual program and my PowerPoint as well. So when you bring it up, for those of you who may or may not have used a lot of the Cuisenaire rods, this is a great way for us to do representation. It's also a great way for me to do addition and subtraction, etc. Before I do that, there are lots of different places that you can get Cuisenaire rods. And if you haven't done a lot of work with them, I prefer one that has nothing on it. I don't need a grid right away because I don't need them to know what the numbers are right away. I just need them to know what they're rods and that they have different lengths. That's a starting point. Okay. So when you're working with these, you just simply click them on if you haven't used this program before. And that gives me the 10 that I have. And if students haven't seen these before, you do need to leave them a little bit of time to play with these and to come up with some patterning so they understand that there's different lengths, 10 of them. We will eventually learn what the numbers are. That's not a problem. When you are, if you are looking for some activities to do with these and you have already once or twice introduced them and you want to look, how could I use them for number? Up here in Teacher Resource, when you click this on, there already are units created for you. They are age-based, all right? Not grade-based, age-based. So know what it is you want them to do. Do they want them to decompose and compose numbers? Then go through and simply select that activity, but they're already created for you. Okay, so let's carry on. So if I took this thing right now and I was going to ask students to compose or create numbers, let's assume we fast forwarded here. Each one of these has a value. The orange is the longest and the orange happens to be 10, which works out if I'm looking for numbers to 20. So when I'm asking students to visualize, and I'm assuming that 10's been mastered, okay, or maybe I should do one for 10 first. I'll just do a 10 one first. So if I said, this is my orange rod, I won't even say 10. Can you show me two colors, two different colors that could make that rod? That's your starting point. So I can grab any two. I'll start with this one. But now I have to make sure that I find something that fits in here. It can't hang over, no shortages. So I want to compose an orange rod. In the end, you're composing a 10. Each one of these has a number. So I can try them out. Kids will mix and match until they get one that fits. So here I see that orange is equal to a green and a pink. Again, this is a composition of numbers. This could be an addition problem. I have this as my answer. This was one of my numbers. What am I missing? This plus what gives me this? That's the same conversation. Or this could be a subtraction question. Instead of saying this plus this gave me this, I could say this was my answer. And I'm going to move this to the end where my answer was. What was I missing? I can chop this off and say, that's what I was missing. There's my missing tool. I'm going to show you a DeciTrack that might make that a little bit more obvious for you. Okay, I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint for a second. So if they don't know, you might want to just start with basics. Build an orange rod, build a blue rod, build a brown rod. Just build the rod and get them to understand composition and decomposition, that notion of what we have to do to create a number for addition and subtraction. You have words like objects. These are the things that we're using in order to fill our quantity and to show it. But more than, same than, less than, not enough. Okay, those are some terminology that's going to center around that conversation about addition and subtraction. So I might even ask questions like, does a white cover as much or less than a red on top? So I'm getting to length, but I'm also going to get to quantity in a second. Well, it's less, definitely. How many whites could it take to make a red? 2. In the end, if I wanted them to count what is on here, then I can simply turn a grid on in the background. So in yours, I'm in my slide deck, in yours, go to the bottom of your screen. You will see the word grid and just turn it on. That will give you the grid in the background, and now each of the rods has a noticeable, tangible, countable value. Now I can make a 15, now I can make a 12, I can make a 20, I can make whatever it is that you're asking me to add to. We also want them to recognize that numbers can be added in any order, right? If I asked you to make an orange rod and use whatever colors you want to build it, as long as you're not hanging over the end or short, any combination would be correct. I can transfer those into numbers and I can show it as an addition statement. But here I'm showing that white plus red would give me the same answer as red plus white. How would you model that for me to prove to me that you know that? I can show you that the green fits under both. I could also have added 3 white ones together. This is a model. So I would show them how to model this, and then I might give them another number. How could you show me that? Let's just pick 2 out here. Oh, I'm on my screen. Can't do that. So pick any 2 colors, and then I can say, how do you know that you could add those in 2 different orders? They just need to slide the one that is equal to underneath. But here's my mathematical sentences, my symbolic version as I start to learn each one of these and create them. When they're working with the teens are always a difficult number for kids to comprehend, because we say it backwards from anything else. We say 16. We don't say 6 at the lead on anything other than 6 by itself. So again, those teens need to have a visual. So taking a 10 bar and adding another bar onto it to give me a visual of what a teen number actually is. And in your curriculum, that's exactly what it asks of you, is a teen needs to be represented as 10 with another number. How do I model that? You could use Cuisenaire rods. I could use money. That would be the same thing. So there are lots of different possible combinations depending on what target you give me. If you said, I want you to work with the yellow rod, a yellow is 5. What are all the possible combinations that you can create? If I want you to work with 15, then the same thing will happen. I'll have 10 as my base, and then I'm going to have my combinations for 5. If there's no limit as to how many I have, I can have multiple numbers here, as you're seeing. You could play a game with them. This gets to the same target. So I could give them a wheel. You can print these off the internet. There's hundreds of them. Pick however many sections you would like. It doesn't have to be this many. And put a number in the middle. Maybe it's 10, maybe it's 16, maybe it's 20. Like, where are they at? Can they model the number that they've shown you on here? Now you will see that some students in these examples have placed 2. They could place 2 just to double check that in fact that number is what they want. In this case, they're also showing it as a subtraction. I have this, take away this, gives me 6. So these students were tasked with showing the number using addition and subtraction. If your students haven't done enough addition yet, then it would just be, what 2 numbers or what 2 bars could you show me that represent the number that you have? And you could go into the teens at this point easily, depending on. The nice part about this is that you can differentiate this activity and just split the kids up into different pods in the classroom. If you have got some high flyers that are ready for 20 or at that point, great. If not, and they're working at 10 level, then adjust it accordingly. Laminate them, just use a dry marker. That's a great one. I won't go into these, but these are different combinations of addition again, working our way to 20. All right, so I'm not saying that everybody needs to be here yet, but as you're working your way forward, These are some activities that you could use that get to your outcome, but just offer a little bit of different thinking, good problem solving skills in here as well. So every one of these is hyperlinked when you get the slide deck. You just go into those, click them on, and then you can download it. Okay, they're all freeware. And then I've also given you the New Zealand Math site. There's lots of supports in this site that you can go to. So in that level of counting that Nikki Newton had talked about, Dr. Newton basically said with the 20, now obviously grade 1 isn't going all the way up to all 20 levels. They kind of go up to sort of level 9, because as I start moving forward, I start getting into numbers that are just tasking the conversation around 10, and partly that is now our new grade or kindergarten curriculum. But then I'm starting to move into level 9, which I'm starting to get into numbers of 30 and 40 and 50, right? So they're starting to move up, and there will be some things in level 10 that they're able to do as well, because you're going to be skip counting, right? We've got skip counting by 2s, 5s, and 10s. And we're going to do that wherever we can. It's not a separate unit on its own. Just keep bringing it in over and over and over again. One of the other pieces that was shown for numbers, especially when we're starting to work with teens, is that the students often did not see 10 frames as an increase in number. They don't see it as an addition. So for example, let's say you use the 10 frame, you have it down and you have 7 items in there, and you ask them how many more do you have to add to that to get to a full 10 frame. So I'm not even saying 10. So they have to know that they've got 7. They would want to say that it's 3. But what she noted was that they didn't always see that as an increase in quantity. They saw it as filling the frame, but didn't connect it to being a sum. And so what they found was that if you took the 10 frame, and I'm not saying do away 10 frames at all, if you took the 10 frame and actually split it occasionally into just a vertical row, so take your 2 rows and make it 1, that what they were seeing is the same kind of question. I have 3 in my 10 frame. What if I wanted to add 2 more? What would happen? Well, I would have to fill this one and I would fill this one. And the visual that it's going up starts to understand that it's increasing. Still the same 10 frame, just a different version of it. This also links to a Rec and Rec, because now I have 5 in one color and 5 in another color. So this is another way that I can interpret an increase in number. So if this is my 10 for my teens, I can build my 10 and have another one sitting beside it to show the increase as I start to build 14, 16, 18, whatever you're working on. She also, and I just finished with a group earlier today that was doing exactly the same one. And they were talking about that they had these actual 10 frames on the floor. They used plastic. She used a shower curtain. She went to the dollar store and just found some duct tape, because it comes in every color now, and just mapped out a large 10 frame where students actually stepped off the numbers that they were going to do. So it became physical, it became real, it was something that they could connect to. Or just taking a large piece of paper was another suggestion that she had, and using, let's say, dark black paper plates to create a 10 frame that's more life size. So again, it's just the same things that I could do with a paper and pencil, but it's interactive in the sense that the students are out of their desk and they're involved in it. Bingo, having subitizing bingo, just any variety of that would be great. Subitizing with hands, hash marks, 10 frames, whatever you can find. And if you need some of these, just let me know before we leave today. I can put some into the file folder if you don't have any of those. But just having a variety of them that you can use with the students. Number lines. Most of you in grade 1, when I come in and I see desks, I see number lines on them, which is a really important piece for us to connect to. Conceptually, they help to solidify mathematical thinking. So they're an important tool, and we need to continue to use them. But we also need to use them in a variety of different opportunities. So money using them. We could use them with Cuisenaire rods, and I'll show you that in just a second. So concepts like near, far, before, after, what number comes 2 after, what number comes 5 before. Like all of those questions, I can easily do that with a number line. And those are the kinds of things you do. Skip counting by 2s, by 5s, by 10s. Absolutely can do that with a number line. So when we look at number lines, though, it's really important that grade 1s know what a number line is. Don't just hand it to me. What is it that makes a number line? What is it that you call a number line? So we just recently did this in one of our classes where we showed the students at a horizontal line going left and right. We did a vertical conversation because those are the hashtags that I'm seeing on my line. So I need to understand how this line got put together. And often we don't do that. We just assume that, oh, it's intuitive. It isn't for all the children. The most important part is right here, from 0 to 1. 0 to 1 tells me how far everything is going to be incremented after that. And when children learn to count, they don't learn at 0. They learn to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So often the very first mistake they make when we give them a number line is they go straight to 1, right? They don't realize that from 0 to 1 is the distance to 1. So it's important that they understand how a number line gets put together and actually make one of their own. That's an important piece. If you print off a number line that is incremented at 1 centimeter apart, then you can take all of your Cuisenaire rods and lay them on top here. And now I can say, can you show me a 5? So they'll get out a yellow. Can you increase it by 10? Put an orange on. Where am I at? I'll be at 15. So I can build my addition fact statements right on a number line. Just print off one that's 1 centimeter apart because that's what each of your cubes are. I can extend that to any number. So even though I might not be able to add numbers beyond 40, I can certainly skip count. I can take my 10 rod and lay it on here and skip count by 10s. It'll fit here is my first one, 10. Here's my second one, 20. Here's my third one. So again, it's the visual and putting it on the physical part, the hand touching, which helps me to solidify it in my head. And then you can go all the way to 100. I mean, you don't have to stop it at those when they're ready, okay, whatever point they're at. Those teens, remember, are struggling points. So one of the pieces of research that I'm just going to skip down one here, that Dr. Newton brought forward, and I thought it was really actually brilliant, is that when you are building teens, if you're using base 10 blocks and they're not the same, if they're the same color, if they're all the yellow ones or all the blue ones, and if you have different colors in the classroom or Unifix cubes or use your Cuisenaire rod, make the 10 a different color so that it stands out that this is a 10 with another number added onto it, which is our outcome that we're trying to, or one of our knowledge pieces that we want to do, so that they visibly see the 10 as a number and then something added onto it. You could use a rec and rec, right? A rec and rec is great for 20. Because now I can say, can you show me 10? Well, 5 and 10, they're in increments of 5. And when I put 2 more beads on, what will I get? Again, it's a visual. It's a fast way for them to add and to count. You could put it on a shoelace and skip count by 5s, by 2s, by 10s, whatever you want to build. But these are good things for them to build themselves. You can build it with them in class, but then they have their own that they can do. Just take a shoelace. And you can buy pony beads at Dollar Tree. They're the best ones that they are fat enough to let a shoelace go through that you can just put them on easily. So we generally build rec and recs with grade 1s in schools that I've been in before. We don't necessarily build them all with a shoelace, but we definitely build a rec and rec that has 2 rows on it so that they can see the 20 and that they can do some quick additions with it. This is a DASI rack. Lots of people have used these. Some people have never seen them before, but really it takes your Cuisenaire rods and it's just doing exactly the same thing that we did laying on the table, but it also gives me the opportunity to really see it in action with the number line at the same time. So your Cuisenaire rod fits in the center. Let's say I want to build 14. So here's my 10, here's my 4. What number am I at? I read it off. I can see 14. I can verify that it's at 14. So what if I said to them, build me 16 and then verify that it's at 16. Well, they can show me that I have a 10. They can measure this one. They could take the 10 out and measure it and show that it's a 6 and that 10 and 6 gave me 16, right? There's their modeling and their explanation to you. It's not just enough to say that I put the 2 together, right? Show me how you knew that that was going to work. I could say kind of the same example that I gave you. Every addition can also become a subtraction. What if I said I have a blue plus what gives me 20? Well, the blue ends at 9. 9 plus what number ends at 20? I can either count, I could change it to a subtraction and say I'm going to do 20 take away 9. And where it ends, it's like saying I've used this much of the orange. That means I have 11 left that I need to find. It's right here. So this is where we can show them that addition can be changed to subtraction. And we have that in our curriculum as well. The Dowsey rods have double sides to them, so I can build that kind of understanding. And they go to 100. So they go in 50, 0 to 50, and then 51 to 100. So I can connect the two, and I don't necessarily have to, when I'm talking about a number that goes to 100, I don't have to build all of the rods along the way. I often will say, I'm going to work at 50. And can you show me what 10 less than 50 would be? Just visually. I'm not asking them to do it mathematically. So I could put a 10 frame ending at 50, and I might say to them, okay, show me 4 less than that. So go find a rod that's 4 long, put it at the end. Where do I end up? If they can't figure that out by counting backwards, right? Giving them more strategies for all those things that we're talking about, counting forward and backward, anywhere on the number line to 100. So when you talk about how do I represent numbers to 100, this is one way that we can do that. I can ask them to skip count. Maybe I'm saying, can you skip count by 10s to 50? So if you have enough 10s, they could layer in 5 10s and go to 50. Can you show me another way to skip count to 50? Well, I could go by 5s. You're going to need a lot of rods, but that's okay. But it gets even better. They could say, well, I could go to by 2s. Okay, well, show me. If you have enough 2 reds to go, they're going to need a lot of them to get to 50. Great. So this is the visual where I can skip count at the same time. In your resources that I've given you something called Number Pass, and that was something that Dr. Newton talked about. They're great because they're just activities, but they get to exactly what your outcomes are. So I might be a basketball player, and I might say, I'm standing right here. What am I standing on? I'm standing at 3. How far do you need to go to be at the basket to shoot, right? It's just that problem solving that I need to recognize that I'm going to advance a certain amount, but not necessarily to the end. And I can make those numbers bigger. They don't have to just be to 10. These templates are already created, so you don't have to go in and do them. And I have them linked for you. So let's just, I'm cognizant of time here. So I want to look at some strategies and some supports that I built in for you that will give you a chance to go back in at some point and grab some of these out. So whether they're working to 5, to 10, to 50, to 100, each one of these will allow you to transition them that forward. One of them could be if I'm measuring and weighing numbers, let's compare numbers. Is 50 more or less than 40? So if I can't see it on a number line, maybe I want to use a balance to try it out. So I'm going to put the link in the chat box if you want to grab it, and then you can just load it onto your computer. It's in your slide deck as well, so you can access it from there. But this one again, so if I wanted to have 50, okay, that was my question. I might ask them, how could we get to 50? What could we do here? So if you have your money and they're starting to learn about their money, well, I can count by 10s. So I could go 5 10s. In this case, it's grams, but that's okay. Let's just use 10s. 5 10s I could put on this side for 50. So put them over. We see what happens. It starts to really fall. And our question was, is that more or less than 40? So if I've been skip counting or counting money at all, I might know that 2 20s is 40, but maybe I don't. Let's just stick with 10s. So I put my 4 10s, 10, 20, 30, and 40. Okay, not quite balanced. So a good question would be, what are you missing? How much more do you need to add? And with a 10, it's pretty easy to see. But if you start incrementing it with 5s in there and adding 1s on to get the teens or to get 46 or whatever, what is it I need to get them balanced, right? So I can have that conversation and use that to represent numbers as well, to compare numbers, to count back, whatever. Okay, let's go back to mine. You have another link. I won't bring this one up, but this link gives you multiple manipulatives, not just balance scales. It'll give you a whole bunch. So more than you're going to need in grade 1 for sure. Okay, let me give you another balance scale where we can compare numbers. I'll put this one into the chat box as well. So grab that one. And so one of the things we have is a less than greater than comparison, right? So we want to make sure they understand what that means. So if I ask them, is 5 less than or greater than 7? Well, I don't know. Let's check. I'll put 5. Oh, it went down. All right, let's put it over here. Oh, okay, so 7, it definitely. Now, I can even add this to a teen. Like I can say, what if this was 17 and 15, right? Or 14 or whatever. I can still have that generalization. I could ask them, what would I need to do to make sure this is balanced now? So I need to move this one over to here. But right now, I know that 5 is higher up. It's a lot less in weight than it is over here. So I can hang my hat and show that I understand that 5 is less than 7. If I want to make them the same, I'm going to move it over. I verify that it is the same. I'm going to swap it and I'm going to grab my equal sign. Okay, so just another tool, another representation. I can do the same with Cuisenaire rods. If they're all the same kind of rods, and I'll qualify that, like they all have to be the same kind. I don't know about the plastic ones, but I do know that the solid ones, they're weighed out. So you can put them in a scale so kids can see that these are the same and they don't have to be the same colors on both sides. They're weighted accordingly, so I can mix and match as long as the numbers add up to the same. So I could do that as well. But equality is one of our concepts that we need to be able to talk about. One of the other pieces I want to show you, and not that I want to talk about interventions here, but we did create interventions for the students last year when the government gave us some money that they were available to use for personnel that could come in and help support students who were just not where they should be. So we had created interventions both from an EA perspective, if it was EA led, and then there's some that were created for teacher led. So if it was the teacher in the classroom that was going to do it. Both offer something a little bit different. You could go into this one here, the EA one, and you could use some of this as a quick check to see where students are at. Let's not worry about the intervention side of it, but use it as a quick assessment tool to see where are they at with number lines, or where are they at with quantity, or are they able to subitize or add the basics. So you could just use that as a quick checkpoint along the way. You could also go into the ones that are over on the counting side for the teacher as well. There's tons in there that you could grab. But I just want to point that out, that it's available. It's not just that we're looking for an intervention. If you want a game for the students to play that gets at the things that we're doing, just draw this. All I did was I just took a marker, I traced out a 5-leaf petal or whatever. You could make it 6. This is just on foam. I got these at Walmart, cut them in half, and then just drew them on there. So if you're using the subitizing cards that we talked about earlier in the session at the very beginning, they're in all kinds of forms. There's fingers, there's the rec and recs, there's number, there's dot patterns. You could even throw dominoes in here. You could put money in here. Basically, you would set it at whatever number their target is. So if your students are all good at 10 or 12, then I can use pretty much anything that's in the subitizing kit. There's also teens in there. What they would do is just randomly pick out however many petals you have, in this case 5. They randomly pick out 5. We called this group because it was a group that wasn't yet at a higher level, so you can differentiate. And they didn't know dot patterns, so we just took a die or a cube from Dollarama. I just bought a package of them and we put the numbers on. But if they're able to handle that, we want to use a regular die. And what you're going to do is roll each one of us. So Leah gets one, Christine gets one, Colleen gets one, everyone, each one of us has our own board. And what we're going to do is simply roll. If I roll a number that I have on my board, I take it off. If I don't, I lose my turn, it goes to the next person. It just keeps going around. And eventually what happens is you're trying to get your entire flower cleared off. You are the winner. If you're a student who's well into larger numbers, then I'm going to change what I'm going to use. And the reason we have 3 dies here is because if I wanted to use some dominoes, here I've got some teens, but you can get dominoes that are 6s. You can get 9s. So 9 and 9 is 18. So I need 3 dies. You can also get 12s. which are 24s, which goes beyond our addition of 20. So you could go with 3 dice if you're going to let them use anything in there and let them roll. Now they have to add up their numbers that are here and find it over here. So again, this might be a higher level group that's doing it, a lower level group's doing something else. You can decide what their total values are. You might want to say 5 or 15. Okay, show me combinations that create this. So I just picked a 5 because those are easy right now, but if I changed it to 15, then I need to go and find the 10 frame that I could fit with this, 10 and a 5. Here's a 10 and a 5, right? And there's different versions of 10 in there. So how can they model for you? Can they find a domino that adds up to 15 if you have the right size number of dominoes? You could play war, have them teach them a game of war, because subitizing leads to academic success in math. The faster they can subitize, the better they are at math facts all the way along, not just in grade 1 and grade 2. So if I were to have my own handful of subitizing cards and you have yours, we both turn them over at the same time. Whoever calls out the biggest number first wins the pair. If they're at a point where you feel confident that they can do, each one of us turn it over, Leo turns one over, I turn one over, whoever calls out the first sum correctly of the 2 that we turned over wins the pair. So you can tool this up any way you want. You can change it to subtraction. Take the largest number minus the smallest number. It's just that mental subitizing quick math that we want them to get versed at. They do love this game. Like it's an easy one because everybody can play. Nobody gets left off. You can pair students at equal abilities. In your file, I have put some slide decks, and these slide decks represent these activities in here. And so there's a game board that deals with counting to 120, drop and add. Now in the slide deck, there are Google Slides. You need to download the Google Slides. That's what it'll ask you to do. When you click it on, it'll just say make a copy. So make a copy of it, but don't PDF it, because within the slides is the game, and you need to be able to have access to that to drag the game pieces around. So you'll have access to that and any of the other ones. I didn't have 5 of them for grade 1, so I threw another one in that is on sorting. So if you've ever read the book Red Fish, Blue Fish, that's kind of what it's based on. It's based on Venn diagrams, which is comparison. So it goes beyond grade 1. It'll go partway through and then it stops. So you're going to stop because it's going to go into numbers that are beyond what they need. But again, just download it. And once you've downloaded it, you can also edit it. Okay? You're not stuck to just that one. So the next 5 levels that exist would be things like counting by tens, right? We skip bound by tens, counting to 100, that's where we're at. Counting by snaps and taps, the sounds, right? Using sound. What's the beat of music? Can they keep that pace? That's your patterning also at the same time. So can they count those beats as they're moving through? Counting by 2s and 5s fluently, right? That needs to be quick. Money would be your best user in that. Count my nickels, count my toonies, count my $5 bills, count my $10 bills. There are so many different ways that I can use that to get to 100. Also, what she shared with us was there are a number of number lines that have been created that already do some of that for us. Like if I want to skip count by 5s or 10s, or I want a visual that goes underneath each one. So instead of creating those, I'll give you the link to find them. Put money on a number line. Show me that every time I see a 5, I can put a nickel. Show me that every time I have 2 nickels already accumulated, I can put a dime. So they're incrementing by 5s, they're counting by skip counting by 5s, skip counting by 10s. Again, I can build that all as I go along. So leverage money as much as you can. I can use it as a counter. I see it. I would ask questions about, can you trade 2 loonies for a toonie? Before I bring out 10 blocks and tell them about how 10 ones becomes a rod, why don't you show me that 10 loonies becomes a $10 bill, or that 5 loonies becomes a $5 bill, and 2 $5 bills can be traded for 10. That concept needs to be solidified, and this is real. That's that tangible real as opposed to the abstract. So Sparklebox is, Sparklebox, I'm going to throw this one into the chat box, and then I'll talk about the other ones, and then you'll know what to find in them. I'll put this one in if you want to grab it. This comes from the UK. Everything on here except the money works for Canadian math. So don't use the money ones because obviously that's not Canadian dollars. This can be used for science as well. Your current science curriculum, it works marvelous for that. So at the top, I'll just back up a bit. At the top, you have a Google search bar. So if you, let's say you wanted to talk about matter, you could type in matter. What will happen is you'll move away from this page and behind it, it will bring a whole drop down list of links for you, either within Sparklebox or anywhere else that deals with matter, whatever they have. Whatever is in here, template wise, worksheet wise, poster wise, is all freeware. So you are able to use it. So let's go to counting because we've been talking about counting. So if you bring up counting, this is where you're going to find a ton of different number lines. Do you want to count by tens? Do you want to count by fives, like the one we just looked at? Whatever it is that you want. So all of these have things that you can download. You don't have to make them. They're already there. So leverage that to save a bit of time on your behalf, that you don't have to do that. The number ladders is a great one for them too. We haven't got time to go through them all, but we'll just so I can mention it. All right, below this or on this side here, when we talk about 20 levels of counting, Dr. Newton looks at trajectories. She created a trajectory, which means as I move up a level, what activity would fit with that level? And you will find those when you click this on. If you would like to watch a very similar video to what I was working with her on, have a link on there, or just click that link on. It's from last year, but it really does touch on kindergarten and grade 1 in particular, strategies that you can use and understandings. So I just included it so that you'd have an opportunity to perhaps watch that. The other piece is that Ontario has also just recently changed their math curriculum about 2 years ago, and their links are very close to ours. Their outcomes do match. They're not perfect match, but there are a number of them that fit exceptionally well in kindergarten or in grade 1 or in grade 2. Yes, there are some grade 1s that we would move down to kindergarten, but for the most part, you can go in here. So I included the counting ones because some of those fit for grade 1 as well. And I've also included a grade 1 in here. So when you click these on, you will get a host of lessons and activities completed and ready to go. You don't have to just read them and then try and create the materials. Everything you need is created for you. So again, when you're looking for how do I come up with something new that still meets my outcome, moves them forward in their thinking, this would be a great link for you to go to. This is your Redfish Bluefish. It is a slide deck. So again, you'll just copy it and then download it, and then you'll have access to it. Okay. Whoops. Don't want to go into that one. So where am I going to find these? Let's just refresh our memory. I'll take you there right now. So click on the moving forward. You have a login, all of you, so you need to make sure that you've logged in. And when you're there, you're going to go into the subject areas, click on math. When you get down to math, you'll see that we have the grades. So we're going to go to grade 1. You have access to every grade, not just grade 1. So go to grade 1 and it's posted by the date. So here is all of your resources already posted for you. So in here, you'll find, here's my slide deck. It's PDF'd and you can just go in and click on the links, like everything's active. Here are those slides that I talked to you about. So this is where when you click it on, it'll say make a copy. So just make a copy, save it to your computer, and then you have it. And then these are the skill concepts with some of those definition pieces already built. They're just being started, so they're not completed. So this gives you a good starting point. And remember that you have other things in previous sessions. I'm not going to repost things that we've used over and over and over again. So if there was like, if you don't have the Subitizing cards, go back into the previous sessions and find them. Or remember that in additional provincial resources, we have those sample math kits. If you go to grade 1 math kit, you don't have to build a kit if you don't want to, but below the explanation of what's in the kit and why it's there, you have all of the things that were in the kit that needed to be printed. You have those available to you. And we also created those templates. teach me how 5 pennies becomes a nickel. How does 2 nickels become a dime? So remember that the name of the template tells you what coin or bill and or both is on the template. And so you can download them, laminate them. You don't have to print them off every time, just laminate them so that you have them. And then you can just use them over and over and over again. So that will be, and yes, the recording will be added for sure, Janet. So it will be right above or right below, it'll be right above all of your slides that you see there. Okay, let me just go back to this guy. The other thing is, and I'm not sure if we have French immersion teachers with us today, but we are also posting the work in French. So as we are doing this work, we have somebody that is translating this math session, for example, what we're doing right now, will be translated into French and then posted. So if you have French immersion teachers in your school and you're not the French immersion teacher, just make them aware that they can go in and grab that as well. Okay, those are the other pieces. Okay, 501. Not bad, you guys. Not too bad at all. All right, so I'm just going to stop our recording. Are there